Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bishop Erwin Scofield, and I'm very excited for the opportunity that I have today to sit down with Bishop-Designate Robert Johnson and to discuss with him certain things about his life, his ministry journey, as we look forward to his upcoming Episcopal Consecration service. So we're grateful to have him and welcome Robert Johnson to this time of talking.
Thank you, Bishop. I'm thankful that you allow me to come and to share and to be here. And I'm grateful that for this opportunity that you have opened up for us to share just some things about ministry and what God has done.
Oftentimes, when we talk to people about their ministry, it's because not everybody is fully aware of what that ministry journey looks like, how long it's been and things of that nature. Can you take a few moments to share briefly with us your ministry journey?
Sure. I actually began ministry in March of 2000. I actually preached my initial sermon in March of 2000. After much consideration and prayer, in the confirmation of my pastor, he allowed me to stand, and so that was in March of 2000. In April of 2001, I was ordained into the ministry. And one of the things that my pastor always said is that he wanted to make sure that we were ready, so that if God had opened up a door for us to pastor, that we would already be ready to be able to fulfill the assignment. And so, not knowing, but 7 years later, in 2008, in 2007 in September, I was called to be interim pastor at my first church, which was Christian Center Union Baptist Church. I was there, and then that January of 2008, I was installed as the senior pastor of that church. And so that journey seemed to be short time, but it was in God's time.
How did it feel, to you stepping in that role, as a person approaching pastoring for the first time? What are some of the things you did to help guide you through that new experience?
I think a lot of it that helped me was to sit under my pastor. He pretty much prepared me for pastoring. Just briefly, when I came into the ministry, I oftentimes questioned God as to why I wasn't like others going out and preach. And God revealed to me in that season that I had to sit to learn from him, so that when he sends me, then I will be equipped to pastor his people. And so if it had not been for that, and of course, as pastoring, everything can be taught, but some things has to be learned. And so I'm still learning a lot about pastor, but I thank God for the foundation that has been set in my life.
I know, and we all know, you have an amazing wife who's very supportive,
Yes. Yes.
for you in ministry.
Yes.
You guys been together for a long time.
Yes. Yes.
And you're still modeling, what God had in mind when marriage was introduced.
Yes.
But can you tell me a little bit about your wife and how she provides the support that you need for the ministry that God has called you to?
Wow. Wow. What can I say about my wife, Lainey Johnson? She has been a key component to my ministry. She has been very supportive since day one. She has pushed me and encouraged me. In fact, I will even go to say I can only remember one time that I have gone out to preach that my wife wasn't there, and that's because she was sick.
Wow.
But every time I've gone and been invited, she has been right there by my side, encouraging me. And so I realized if I didn't have any more cheerleaders, I had one with me. But she has been very crucial in ministry. My wife is one who, as a first lady, is not worried about the first lady's seat. She's not worried about who knows her. Matter of fact, when she goes in church, she never says, "I'm first lady" to anybody. She tells her government name. She introduces herself that way. But she's been a hard worker in ministry, and I believe that I would not be where I am now if it wasn't for her. Walking not behind me, but with me. And that's crucial, I believe, in ministry to any young pastor, that your wife ought to be walking with you and not behind you. And so she was definitely the one who God created for me, because when we first got married, we wasn't churched. We was in church, but we wasn't churched. But we've grown together as children of God and become who we are now.
That's awesome. Tell me about a time, if there is one, where your wife actually had to rescue you or save you or resuscitate you in a low moment, if you will, you know.
Wow. Well, that's quite a few, because we all know the ups and downs in ministry. But I remember one time, and she probably don't remember, but there was one time Sunday after service, we were driving home, and I told her, I says, no, I'm done. I just can't do it. I said, I'm going to go back to the office, get my 2 robes, and just not show up. And she looked at me and said, Robbie, remember God called you. And this is his assignment for you. Is not something that you chose to do, but it's something that you were called to do. And just the mere fact of that conversation kind of refueled me to go back to ministry. And that's just one of many, because, we have to really be honest that ministry is not easy. And if you don't have someone, a wife or your spouse praying with you, praying for you, then, it can get hard. And so, but she has been that joy and that refreshing for ministry, and I know, and not only just that, but for her to really put herself to the side, for she knows what the assignment is. Because one of the things that we must understand as pastors is that when we're called to pastor, God calls us, not our spouse. And so they're not really obligated to be there and do what they do. But I thank God that she is one who sticks by me and walks with me.
I know that there are a number of pastors, at least pastors that I've met, that consider you to be their pastor. Can you give me an example of how such a relationship, came about for you to be a pastor of pastors?
I wish I really had words to explain it. One that particularly kind of sticks out to me, that I cover now, is Pastor Daphne Clark Williams.
She's powerful too.
Yes, she's a powerful woman of God. I call her my sister daughter, and I do that because she was my sister first. But I remember one Sunday I would quite frankly oftentimes visit her when I got through my service. Just go over, visit, sit and get the word. I had a Pacific seat that I would come in, slide in, sit right by the back door. No nothing. And this particular Sunday, I came in, sitting there, and after service, it was concluding, and she stands up and she says to me, after much prayer and consideration, now, mind you, this is in front of her church and all on a Sunday morning, God has spoke to me to ask you to be my covering. And I was lost for a moment, because I'm coming to receive a word, to sit and worship and to fellowship, and this comes to me out of nowhere. And so, we went through the service, got through, and I went up and talked with her, and I said, well, let me pray. And she's straight up. I love her to death. She says, well, Pastor, I don't care what you're praying about. I know what God told me. And I said, well, let him tell me to. And, praying and got with my wife, we prayed.
Yeah.
And, see God's guidance, and God gave me the okay. And from that point on, it's probably been about 4 to 5 years now that we have been covering her. But there's so many other young pastors who may call and ask me different things. And I, a lot of times I try to help them the best I can, but tell them, man, I'm still trying to learn myself, but they see something in me,
Yes.
and I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome. So you pastor a wonderful church now in Elk Ridge.
Yes, yes.
A wonderful church now.
Shout out to them.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I would certainly like you to do that, to give a shout out to them, and to, if you don't mind, share how that came about.
Sure. First of all, shout out to First Baptist of Elk Ridge. Wonderful, wonderful people there. God has blessed me. This coming March will be 2 years of pastoring there.
It's been 2 years
Prior
already.
to there, I pastored 14 years, Christian Center. And it's a long story how I got to that place. But I will say it was God's doing, his direction. But I was introduced to them, candidated for the church, and, the reality or the outcome is they chose me. This church, this coming March, the third Sunday, we'll be celebrating the church anniversary, 182 years of this ministry. And I feel honored to be a part of history of that church. And so there's some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. It's interesting because I had been praying to God to send me some seniors. My church was more youth. I think the oldest one was my mom was there. And back then she wasn't, she still was, and still is vibrant. But I said, I would love to have that mixture. And lo and behold, when I got to First Baptist, they have a lot of seniors stable. And we brought the younger in, and now we have a ministry of both young, middle-aged, and seniors. And so I just love what God has done. He has truly blessed us since we've been there.
That's awesome. And I think there is something to be said about that. I would be leery of a church that is 100% or primarily youth, and a church that is 100% or primarily seniors. But there is something wonderful, in fact, even divine, about having a church that has that blend of youth and seniors.
Yes.
And you get to see that on a weekly basis as a result of God, in his providence, bringing you to First Baptist of Elk Ridge.
Yes.
And I'm sure you see that in the mood, the tone, the atmosphere, the ambiance of the ministry, and things of that nature. So when you leave, now you've pastored for 14 years before you got there.
Correct.
But when you leave First Baptist on a Sunday, how is that different than your previous experience?
It's much different. Nothing against Christian Center, because we had some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. In fact, all of Christian Center actually came with me.
Wow.
I remember when they called me the day to come. Matter of fact, they called me on a Saturday and told me that I was elected, wanted me to start the following Sunday. And so that Sunday, I had a meeting with the church, and because they had knew that God had spoke to me about merging the church and coming together with another ministry. And, I thank God for those who God had blessed to be there, because they said, Pastor, wherever you go, we're going with you. And once I had them, let me know if they wanted to go, and I was shocked. But everybody just said, what's the address? And I'll see you there next Sunday. And they showed up. And God has been strategic in that shifting, because of some of the testimony is that I have been trying to disobey God in doing it. And just a little bit of a testimonial background on it. It's because, if you know how the church arena is, if merging, leaving, then it's always a cloud put over the church, or what the pastor must have did this, or they must have lost their building, or all of these things. And so that stuck in my mind because I didn't want that cloud to be over myself and those who I pastored. But God, kind of forced me. Really, he has a way of doing it without, too many details, but he dried up a lot of things in my life. And I'll never forget the very first Sunday sitting in First Baptist as interim pastor. I'm sitting in the pulpit watching members who were members of Christian Center come through the door to the new church. And for years, I couldn't get them to come back to there.
Yeah.
And as months went on, they started coming in, and they're actually there with me now.
That is awesome.
And it's like God opened up the gates.
Yes, that is awesome.
And I believe, Bishop, that would have never happened if I never would have been obedient to what God was saying.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a powerful testimony.
Yes.
And certainly for, ministers to take note of. Sometimes the solution to taking a ministry to the next level is to find a compatible ministry with which to merge,
Yes.
For greater spiritual impact. I used to have a saying many years ago, united for greater spiritual impact.
Yes.
Because I do believe that when we come together with a common cause, then it allows us, to be more impactful for God.
Yes.
One can chase 1,000,
Right,
and
but
two can
yes,
put 10,000 aflight.
Yes.
Which is not just simple mathematics.
Correct.
So that's really good.
Yes.
Your pastor have invested a lot in you and preparing you, and I think that's important for every pastor to prepare the next, generation of pastors to be ready to go out and to execute that role with efficiency. And obviously, that's exactly what he did, because that was manifested in the fruit that came from your ministry. I'm curious, however, somewhere along that line in the early years of your pastorate, you made the connection with the Progressive Freewill Baptist Conference. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about?
Sure. I think pretty much about 2 years or 3 years after being pastoring Christian Center, there was a gentleman, the late minister Tavon Newkirk, who I was good friends with, who reached out to me to ask me if I would become a part of the Progressive Conference. And, I didn't give him an answer right away. I prayed about it, and he invited me to come to their annual, which was in October. And I went to the annual and began to fall in love with the people, some of them that I already knew because of ministry anyway, and began to look at the conference, and I decided to be a part of the conference. And at that point, again, brought the church in with me, and they was welcoming us into the conference, and and we begin to build the relationship from that point on.
From that time of joining, you joined under Bishop McKinney. How many moderators has there been for you prior to you becoming moderator?
Just one, Bishop Chalene Smith.
Okay.
Just shortly, I think a year later, that October for our annual, he was voted in as the moderator and became the bishop of the conference. And so I sat with him 2 years, and little did I know that when they elected him to be bishop, then they elected me to be the vice moderator in that same transition. And mind you, was maybe been there 2 years, but they saw something in me to elevate me to that position. Yes.
It makes me wonder, though, because it seems like there has been tradition in the past with past moderators also being consecrated to the bishopric.
Correct.
But when you took over why wasn't you initially consecrated to the bishopric?
In October of 2014, when I was elected, generally the following year in July for our annual conventions, the consecration would take place. But they approached me about it, but I kind of shied away from it. I began to tell them that right now, I just want to do work. I want to show you of what God has put in me, because I'm not concerned about the title. So I was more concerned about doing the work. And leave me. And I told you that Minister Newkirk was the one that brought me into the conference, or showed me the conference. And for 2 to 3 years straight, every year he was on me about being consecrated, and I just kept telling him no, because in my mind God hadn't spoke to me in that aspect yet. When it comes to ministry, my main concern was to get in work. Again, I go back to something that my pastor said: love the people, learn the people, get to know the people. Develop a relationship with the people. And once you do that, then I believe that God says it's time to go to the next level in ministry.
I want to selfishly reflect with you for a moment because, I regard you highly. I think you are an amazing kingdom asset. A blessing to the body of Christ and to the church. In fact, I think I met your father-in-law through you.
Yes. Yes.
And he was an amazing guy. And,
Yes.
I love him. He instantly connected with me and in many ways encouraged me,
Yes.
in my ministry, even when I spent some time at Mount Hebron.
Yes. Yes.
He was like a big cheerleader for, some of the things there.
Yeah.
An amazing person. But here's the thing that I really love is when you had your trial sermon, I think you may have stopped by my church or office to even tell me that you was going to be doing a trial sermon. And obviously, I wasn't going to miss that. So I came. I can't remember the book I gave you. I think it might have been entitled "The Preacher and His Preaching" by Gibbs. I think it
Yes.
might have been that
Yes.
book, that I gave you on the day that you did your trial sermon. I got to see your ordination.
Yes.
Which happened, I believe it was that following year.
Correct.
Of your ordination. And then when you called to tell me about the opportunity that you had to pastor, I was really excited with you, and to just watch how the Lord was opening doors and gradually moving you into spaces, of more ministry.
Yes.
After you were pastoring for a couple years, I remember you reaching out to me again to tell me about the opportunity that you had with the Progressive Freewill Baptist Conference.
Correct. Yes.
And again, I'm excited for you. I mean, I felt like I had a front row seat
Yes.
to watch God just take you through ascending levels, of ministry. And you served, very well there, which was a tremendous blessing. And as you begin to respond to what you felt was the leading of the Lord to merge the church, we've had several conversations.
Yes.
And there was several people who had the opportunity
Yes.
to have a Robert Johnson in their ministry. And I felt like anyone who passed up on that opportunity really didn't realize, what they were passing up on. But I understand that sometimes people have to pass up on it if God has you earmarked
Yes.
for another place.
Correct.
And when it came about for, the First Baptist of Elk Ridge, and, talking through that and seeing how that transpired, the decision that was made, I was certainly excited to know that God was fulfilling
Yes.
his will concerning you and the church. But you mentioned it earlier, the fact that Christian Center Union was able to come and to, almost collectively make that decision to be a part of First Baptist of Elkridge
Yes.
was like a seal of approval,
Yes.
and confirmation,
Absolutely.
of God's will.
Yes.
So I've been celebrating with you along this journey for a long time.
Yeah. Yes, you have.
And I considered it an honor to speak at your installation service.
Yes.
So when I say this with a full heart of gratitude. I'm very sentimental. Moments mean a lot to me. I don't forget moments. I kind of hold on to them because they are a testament of the journey that God has given us on. And these moments become milestones.
Yes. Absolutely.
It's one thing to have your own milestones.
Yes.
It's another thing to celebrate the milestone of a friend.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'm grateful to God for what he's doing in your life and what he, will continue to do in your life and to be able to see it. So it's a real joy,
Yeah.
for me. And so I want to thank you for, maintaining this connection that we have,
Yes.
for the many times we get to talk and for extending the opportunity, because you have to know, because I'm your friend and because I love you as a brother and
Yes.
believe in your ministry, I would be physically present to celebrate with you even if I wasn't,
Yes.
a part of the program.
Yes.
So I consider it an extra honor when I have an opportunity to participate.
Yes. Well, thank you, Bishop. Like you say, you've been a part of our history, and not just in ministry, but even with my wife and I, celebrating our wedding renewals, in all of those areas. You have been a key part. I, of course, and I don't know if I ever said this to you, but you are one of my mentors. You are one that I reach out to. And when I get those, God gives me those somewhat sticky kind of sermons. You're the first one I'm calling, to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. And so you have been very instrumental in my ministry, and I would have it no other way. Would have it no other way. There's many preachers or bishops and stuff that I know, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because the reality is that you have shown yourself to be a true friend. And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for pastors to be able to trust people with their personal aspect of their life. And you have shown to be trustworthy. And so I'm honored that you agreed to be a part of this wonderful celebration.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, for those of you who have been watching, this interview, I just want to thank you for taking the time to do so. But I also want to strongly encourage you to mark your calendar for April the 12th, 2025, which is the Episcopal Consecration of Bishop-Designate Robert Johnson. I believe that he is a worthy guy for this consecration. The Bible says, they who desire the office of a bishop desires a good work. But most people don't understand what a good work means. We're going to hear something about that when we get to the consecration. But I encourage all of Robbie's friends, some of you know him as Robbie,
Yes.
Pastor Johnson's friends, or for those of you who consider him your pastor, for those of you who serve with him in the conference, or those of you who fellowship with him or tap him on many occasions to speak at your church, please come out and support him on this particular occasion. This is a high holy moment. It's significant in his life and ministry, and I know he will be excited to have your support. It's going to be amazing, and you being there is going to make it exponentially better. So please join us, come out to support, and let us lift him, encourage him, and celebrate what God is doing in his life. Thanks for joining us.